Welcome back to the Kind Fibers channel. This is the second installment of the shepherding series. Today we're going to be talking about where your sheep live and housing requirements. My name is Mariah Williams and this is Videos of a Woman Homesteader. The sheep were in last night, and this is what sheep do in one evening overnight. That was full mineral. It'll need to be refilled. We have hay and mess everywhere. This is what 12 sheep do every night. And every morning we come and we rake it out. Now that the mucking is over, let's talk about the actual housing itself. You will notice that we have this cattle panel across here. And what that is a gate over here. We have it so it can close. When we need to catch some of them, we can close them up. We've got the chain there. We can close them up in this area. So when we're shearing or when we're drenching or anything like that, we can actually catch the entire flock up in this area and then let the other ones loose out here. And then this entire barn lot closes off. You'll also notice we have these 3 T-posts over in this corner inside of our catch pen, and that is in case we need to actually separate a couple of the sheep, which is really great during lambing season, which we don't have, but sometimes we do have one come in that's pregnant. What we do is we have cattle panels cut to this size, and we put a piece along this way, the long way, that's stationary, and then we tie the other one with wire in such a way that it makes a little swinging door, and that way they can go in or out. This is not for quarantine in case somebody's sick. This is more if somebody's injured, or if somebody lambs, or even, you know, we've put a cow up in here before that was injured. So it's really good to be able to have a smaller pen inside of the catch pen in order to work your sheep more easily. So let's talk about the actual barn itself. It's a 2-story barn. It's got plenty of loft. It has plenty of air circulation and airflow. We also provide a nice place for the sheep to get up out of any drafts. Behind this wall here is all of our hay, and then we also have a tarp up to help cover a little bit more. Sheep need a very draft free place, but they also need some place that has plenty of light and plenty of air exchange in order to stay healthy. We have a couple that like to sleep up in this little alcove, especially when it's really hot summer. This little alcove stays nice and very cool. They like to lay up in here, and then they like to lay up in that corner. They really like shade during the height of the heat. And you'll notice that you can see through that wall, but on the other side of that wall is yet another wall. So there's, again, wind protection for them. For hay feeders, we've used old broken dog houses that we ended up getting for free. I have an old tub here. It sprung more than 1 or 2 leaks, so it is now just a hay feeder. And then we've got the rubber troughs. I tried making a hay manger. They ripped it apart. So this is what's left of it, and we just kind of lay the hay up on here. Sheep, it's got to be tough. They destroy things really easily, and it could be because I have sheep that are, you know, over 200 pounds. So what are the pros and cons of keeping sheep in housing versus out on pasture? And what are the pros and cons of keeping sheep on pasture versus in housing? I personally have always kept my sheep in housing. I started out with very young sheep, lambs, and they needed to be locked up at night with their dog for protection. We had a bobcat almost get them one time. Thankfully, my dog stopped that. She was only a few months old at the time and ended up getting hurt herself, but she did it. She was 4 months old and she took on a bobcat, so to protect her sheep. I always sleep my dog with my sheep. It's really been very beneficial for me. I've only had the bobcat once, and then when they were out on pasture, a coyote got one of my sheep in the mouth through the fence. And Patience was not with them at the time. The horse was with them. So I've always kept him inside at night because I only have the one dog. And while Patience is an incredibly good livestock guardian, she is one dog. To have sheep out on pasture, you really need to have at least 2 dogs, at least in my area, because of coyotes, bobcats, bears, and then a few people have actually lost their sheep and goats to a panther. Pretty sure Faye's not going to take that on. But even being inside, we've had some issues with barn owls in the past coming after some of our livestock. So Pate will bark, but she can't really protect them because they're in the air and she's on the ground. So the other reason why I've always kept them in sheds or barns is because I've always been able to sleep very close to that. There's only about 20 feet between the house and the barn. And then my camper is right there, and I'm going to be actually moving my camper to behind the barn. So I will literally be 5 feet away. With just having the one dog, she's got to have backup. And that's a big pro of why I have them up here in housing at night, is because of predators. The other thing that I found is my fleeces tend to stay cleaner. I have no problems with rain rot or anything like that because I can keep the sheep inside whenever it's raining. I don't have problems with scald or any of those things, and I really believe it's because I keep the sheep dry and inside in inclement weather. Since I moved them into a more protected barn from, I had them around where the goats are now, and I didn't have any kind of tarping up over the stalls, and that's when I just had a couple of them. I ended up having problems with pneumonia, and I really think it's because of the draft. So having them up here in a very draft-free place, but still being light and airy, I have not had any problems with pneumonia. I also don't have problems with parasites because I clean this out every single day. And since I don't do rotational grazing, I don't have the opportunity to move my sheep through pastures to break those parasite issues. Whereas when they're just left with this much space, they kind of rotate themselves, and that breaks the cycle because there's probably about 3 weeks between each section that they graze naturally without me having to do anything. So the housing actually helps me to manage that parasite load by cleaning it out. I have some sheep that have never been wormed. I have some sheep that only have to be wormed once, maybe twice a year, and that's it. That's my entire parasite issue here. And keeping the housing really clean is part of that. So that's why we take half an hour or so every day to really clean out these sheep stalls. I've tried deep litter in the past. I ended up with parasites. So I don't do that anymore. And I also had this really funky buildup. Unless you have a tractor to get in to do it, don't do it. If you have to do it by hand, God bless your soul. So I really like having the barn for those reasons. The cons are I gotta clean it every day. It's a lot of work. If I'm sick or hurt or something, it still has to be done. So that's something to think about. The more sheep you have, the bigger mess you have to clean up every day. My friends who own Spring Rock Farm, just across in the next hollow, and then some of my friends who are about 5 miles away over in Kentucky, they keep their sheep on pasture. However, they still have shelters for their sheep to get into. One uses some hoop coops or hoop houses that are literally just cattle panels, and they move them from pasture to pasture. It's cattle panels with tarps over it. So it's tarped on each side and the back. And then the neighbors, they have actual like shelters. Some of them are 3-sided, some of them are 2-sided, but they're shelters for the sheep to get in out of the sun and out of the rain and snow. And then they also have a big barn that when really bad weather comes, they put all the sheep up in the barn and use that for lambing, which with wool sheep, you really want to be a little bit more careful about getting those fleeces wet, especially right before shearing. The other 2 farms that have sheep in my area have dogs. And they don't just have 1 or 2 dogs. They have usually upwards of 5 to 8 dogs at one time. And they're all from working lines. They're all Pyrenees and Anatolians or crosses. Several of them have Mastiff in them. So they're big. They're big dogs. These are dogs that, you know, a coyote pack's not going to mess with because it's a pack of huge 100-pound plus dogs. That works really well for them, having them out on pasture all through the year because they have the pack of dogs to deal with any kind of predator that may come after their sheep. That's really everything with housing. It's a pretty straightforward thing. You know, my management style has a little bit more work. When it was 3 sheep, it was really easy. Now that it's 12 sheep, it's a little bit more work, and that's the biggest con, at least for me. Oh, and you have to keep repairs up on your housing, which can be challenging, both financially and physically if you're not real brawny. So I hope you enjoyed this installment and found it enjoyable. If you have any questions on sheep keeping, especially on housing, you'll be free to contact me at contact@kindfibers.com. Is that? Yeah. contact@kindfibers.com. And the website is kindfibers.com if you just want to go through there to contact me. The next installment is going to be on basic medical supplies to keep on hand for sheep, and some of the issues that I've had that have been very common things with health issues with my sheep. So tune in the 1st January of Sunday for that video. And if you want to see the previous video in the series, go over to my playlist, and I hope you enjoy. Have a marvelous day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.